Okay, let's do it. You ready? I can't believe we're doing this. Yes! Oh, wow. Okay, let's do this. Right, I've got the number right. Let's do this. Hello, my name is Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University. And welcome to the New Year's vlog. Woo!
Wow.
Woo!
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Vlog 196. How to complete a doctorate at a distance. Now, there are many titles this vlog could have had. How to support a partner through a PhD, because people have a lot to say about that. How to complete a PhD in a regional city. How to fight against the odds and finish a PhD. They're all the titles we could have chosen. And all of those titles are appropriate to the two extraordinary, inspirational, mythic human beings that I'm sharing this table with. They're both friends of mine. I can't remember a point of my life before I knew them both, and I adore them. I feel like sort of my family, to be honest with you. So it's sort of like a family reunion. They've just come out of the car, and so we just sort of...
After being in it for 5 hours.
After being... Oh, yeah, thanks, Pete. After being in it for 5 hours, but they're having a champagne, so I've given them a champagne and we're sitting down. And let me tell you about these two friends of mine. Extraordinary people that I admire and respect deeply. I've never got to do this in a vlog before. Dr. Sue Charlton.
Not yet, not till the 17th.
Oh.
But remember, this is being recorded for the future Pete. And Dr. Pete Charlton. Now, as you can pick up with these two, they were accidentally married some time ago, but they're both now doctors, and that's quite meaningful to you and I, certainly.
Only an honorary title in my place.
What, yours? Oh, see, so you're saying that our Sue is the real doctor?
Yes.
Oh, I love you forever. But these are two inspirational people, and they completed this wonderful qualification for Sue from Mount Gambier in South Australia, and they've actually driven up to go to Sue's graduation ceremony. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you for helping us get here.
This is just, I mean, I'm quite emotional. I don't know if you are, Sue, but this is, oh look, I'm getting teary now. We were meant to, I always promised you we'd do a vlog, and I think we did say we'd try and do the New Year's vlog, and we're here. And Pete has been such a triumphant human being in my life and in Sue's, and is, I think, because he's such a brilliant man, he'll offer such a great reflection on this process as a partner, that's why this is quite a special vlog for so many reasons. So we have a story to share with you, and on this New Year's vlog, we always try and do something inspirational and extraordinary to give you that energy and fabulousness to start the next year. So let's do this. The three musketeers are back together, the band's back together, let's do this. Right, so you know what I'm going to start with. Can you tell us about this remarkable PhD that you're about to graduate from? Tell us about it. What was it?
Well, it started off as a bit of an exploration of looking at babies' hips in a better way than we do in Australia, because we don't have a very good track record with picking up dysplasia of the hip, and that record is getting worse, not better, which is due, I think, or has been attributed to the changes in sleeping habits and wrapping in relation to the SIDS Safe Sleeping Program, and the fact that babies are wrapped more tightly and not put on their tummies anymore, in part, and also to the fact that regional, it's attributed to being worse in the regions because regional people aren't so well qualified to clinically assess babies' hips.
That criticism has been made in the press.
And criticism has been made in the press. So as we've talked about, gorgeous Sue, there is always a question that's asked of people with a PhD. What problem are you solving? What problem are you solving? So you had an issue whereby hip dysplasia was an issue in babies. That problem was getting worse. And then there was the lens of regional health through which to read this issue problem.
Yes, because it was attributed, it was said to be, or it was known to be worse, a greater risk if you were born in the country of having a late diagnosis of dysplasia of the hip. And when I read that original article, I was somewhat incensed because it was very broadly lumped regional health and urban health. And I think there are some quite advanced people working in the regions who do know how to look at babies' hips.
And two of them happen to be sort of sitting at this table, yes.
And other things. And I thought that if you're going to make statements like that, you ought to qualify them with region or qualify them in some way, not lump regional all together in one great big lump. But I didn't understand that I thought that so much until I got further into my PhD, and it became very obvious that that, in fact, had to become the PhD.
So again, the other great lesson from Sue's thesis, which we can't teach people, is what you think your PhD is going to be about is often not what it's about, and the nature of research is that you don't know because you don't know what's going to happen, because if you did, that's not research. And where did we end up on your thesis? So we did all the studies and so forth, and what did the thesis really end up doing for the final third?
Well, it did end up in really looking at the problems of regional health and the problems of distance, the problems of a single argument about regional health when it's really a whole lot of different issues in different regions. And so the results from my study, my research study that I set up, were exponentially different in the two regions that we tried to study, and that alerted us, not only alerted us, but every warning system went off that something wasn't right, and we needed to look at that a bit more closely and see what was really going on.
And it's just a revelatory thesis. The examiners just thought it was absolutely stunning. So the next question is involving the pair of you, really, because I've got you both sort of trapped. So I'm going to use this proximity that I have of you. So Sue and Pete, as a student and as a spouse, what's the challenge in completing a PhD as part of an already successful career and a successful family? So, you know, all the focus is on the kids, you know, someone that's 22, 23 doing a PhD. That's a very, very small minority. A very large minority, nay, majority of our students in health and education are exactly this model. Successful careers, spouse, and then deciding to do a PhD. So could you tell us how you decided to slot this thesis into your successful life and career?
Well, I was very supportive of the idea of reinforcing the early diagnosis of dysplasia of the hip. Having done my own research some 40 years earlier about babies' hips. And so I was very supportive of Sue pursuing this. And suddenly I became the personal assistant to her instead of Sue being my personal assistant.
And we should say, by the way, you know, a very famous regional general practitioner, regional, you know, medical man that transformed really regional health in this country. So that's Pete.
That's not quite true.
Well, it is. How long have you been? Well, when did you graduate from medicine, sir?
I graduated in '68. Worked in Adelaide for 3 years, doing various resident jobs at that time.
Yeah.
Then we picked up the family and trekked off to New Guinea for a couple of years.
As you do.
With 2 children.
With 2 kids, obviously.
Yes. And that was really the most learning phase of our lives, I would say, the time we spent in a third world country.
Yes.
Learning about people, learning, having to use the knowledge we'd learnt at university.
Yeah.
In a practical way, whereas the 3 years as a resident in Adelaide was very much looking over other people's shoulders most of the time.
I mean,
but all of a sudden, you're it. Whatever you can do is what's available. And no communication with the outside world except by teleprinter, which isn't a very efficient means.
It doesn't sound it, does it?
No telephones. I often thought that it'd be more efficient to go on the bench and shout if I wanted more information. We did have literature available to us, which was very helpful, and many procedures were done with a book on one side and the patient on the other.
This is amazing.
But that was a very steep learning curve, those 2 years. And that's when I realised that coming back to a metropolitan general practice wasn't going to suit me, and that I needed to be a little bit more remote from the city and probably a bit separated from various parents and in-laws not too far away from them, but far enough away that they didn't have too
Men
much
and mother-in-laws,
influence on our
mate.
lives.
Nothing changes, does it?
Well, I'm
Nothing.
not sure which mother-in-law it was.
Oh, well, I knew this was going to happen. Wait till they finish that champagne. But of course, we've then got this wonderful woman's career. Of course, you know, you've got this incredible career. And you might want to just talk about when you finished your degree, madam.
Yes.
Yes.
So I worked at the Children's Hospital briefly for a few years. I opened a private practice in North Adelaide. Had some very wise counsel from a wonderful paediatrician, Eric Sims, who promised that he would support me on 2 conditions. One, that I kept my doors open for 12 months, because he said there'll be 364 days when you want to close them. And 2, that I accepted every patient that he referred to me without visible reaction to the letters of referral that he sent me, and treated them all sort of to the best of my ability.
Because if the parent is concerned, the clinician needs to be concerned.
And I mean, that's I mean, you're always at line, we're all an expert in our own lives.
Yes.
And in health and education, if we all start from that expertise, we go well. But I mean, can you tell us something about being a physiotherapist? You know, because it's a very distinguished area. It's called allied health. I think that in some ways is a bit disrespectful, but still. And the pathway of a professional physiotherapist over these decades.
Yes, so I began, I was always interested in working with children, and I graduated and went straight to the Children's Hospital. But we were very well trained in the physio course in Adelaide at that stage. There were only 30 physio students per year graduating in South Australia. And
Wow, yeah.
we had lots of clinical experience. We were trained by the top people in the field, internationally renowned physiotherapists like Jeff Maitland, and we felt as if we were very, very well trained and had a lot of experience treating adults as well as children. And I chose to go straight into treating children because I'm fairly passionate about children, and they're much easier to relate to in many ways.
They make a lot more sense.
And it's lots more fun.
Yeah, yeah.
They never complain.
Yeah, yeah. And also you are, and I'll say this about the pair of you come from a social justice imperative. You come from, and it gets me quite emotional because it's so rare these days, but it comes from a desire to do good, and your entire family really stand for that.
Yeah, I think so. And I opened my private practice in paediatrics, and then when we went to New Guinea, I didn't have a job there.
You also were a lecturer at the University
Oh yes,
of
I was actually a tutor in paediatrics as well before I left Adelaide. I went to New Guinea. In New Guinea, there were no jobs on offer through the health department, but I can't stand by and watch people that need something doing to them and not be able to help them. So I was in the hospital helping with kids and helping with adults. The problems there were very similar to a lot of the paediatric problems, so that people with polio-like diseases that needed developmental help, and so it was very easy to work there, and we were so well looked after in New Guinea, it didn't matter whether you were paid or not, as long as you felt you were doing something.
Isn't that amazing?
So it was good, and it was a very good experience. It was a bit shattering to begin with to see that there were no children like we might see with cerebral palsy and stuff like that, because they don't survive. And that was a bit of a lesson to me, I think.
Yeah.
But I came back from there and thought, well, when we went to Mount Gambier and Peter joined the practice there, the senior partner said to doctors' wives, doctors' wives don't work. You won't be having a job, and you certainly won't be working in the hospital, because you might tell a patient that he's a better doctor than another doctor, and we can't have that. That would create terrible problems.
Yeah, look, women are a problem, aren't they, Sue?
Yeah.
And the doctor's wife. Yes, and it still exists as a thing. But
And-
so what
and
happened?
Look,
So
I
what?
have to tell you a really funny story.
Tell me, Sue.
Because as chance would have it, I fought the battle to work in Mount Gambier over a little girl that I had seen at the Children's Hospital with
This is a
cerebral
good one.
palsy.
It is.
And
With cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
With cerebral palsy.
And she's just the most gorgeous girl, the most gorgeous family. And they had travelled to Adelaide on the train to see me when I had my practice in Adelaide. I was not going to Mount Gambier and putting up my shingle or doing any work if I didn't see her. And I wasn't going to live there if I didn't provide the service to her that they'd paid to get from me in Adelaide.
And guess where she most recently saw her?
So I won that battle, and I worked with gorgeous Susie all through her life. She became a highly accomplished woman, a very independent woman. Despite her serious cerebral palsy, she drove her own car. She got a job at TAFE in the library. She worked very well. We're travelling to Adelaide today for this.
Today.
And I stop in Pathway to do the right bunch. I get out of the car, I say, I'm just going to the loo before we leave, and I go to the loo and there's someone else in, you know, how you hear someone else in the public loos.
Not hugely, but thanks for sharing that with us, Sue. Yep.
And so I hear a little noise, and out comes this person. It's her.
That's serendipity, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I'm not managing. I'm not managing. I'm really not managing. There's something, and and she was great and well.
She was driving herself to
her own
Adelaide as
car
well.
to Adelaide.
So when we pulled up at Town and Bend for fuel, there she is again. And I thought, Susie, you are haunting my life.
But isn't life a remarkable thing? I mean, I'm not a big believer in sort of chance and stuff, but I'm not a believer in any sort of bloke in the sky with a beard either. But isn't life remarkable that, I mean, what we learn from these two great people is you do good on the planet, and that good does follow you.
Well, it's just fabulous. I mean, she's the most gorgeous girl.
Yeah.
She had a daughter who did vet science and is now a vet somewhere. And she's just the most amazing woman, because as a baby I wouldn't have thought that she
Well, she wanted to ride a bike, and she was told she'd never ride a bike.
Is that unbelievable?
But her father told her she'd never ride a bike.
And see, this is why regional Australia matters.
Yeah.
This is grit, this is determination. That's what this country's based on. So, I mean, this is remarkable. So, we've talked a little bit about Mount Gambier, but we're going to go in there hard now. It's a beautiful, extraordinary place. And tell us a little bit about, because we've gone to Papua New Guinea, we've come back. Tell us about your role in that city and the role of professionals in a regional city, particularly in health.
Well, we did everything in that era. I mean, these days I think the flying doctor comes to Mount Gambier once or twice a day. But in that era, the flying doctor might come to Mount Gambier perhaps 5 or 6 times a year. So most things were managed in the regional setting.
And managed well.
And managed very well. Our general practice was also had surgeons as partners. We had an ENT specialist as a partner.
That's right.
And that was subsequently viewed by the professional colleges as sort of referrals to gain more income for yourself sort of thing, because you were partners in the practice, and they sort of frowned strongly on the fact that these specialists were working in a general practice. But it also meant that the specialists had to look in the child's ear when they had their turn on duty, and alternatively the general practitioner put the drips in when they came out at 2 o'clock in the morning for the specialists.
Absolutely.
So there was a symbiosis that worked very well to make things work.
And Pete, profound expertise.
Mm.
I mean, just the body of knowledge. I mean, I'm in awe. I really am in awe. And my brother, who's Steve Rabb, who is a general practitioner in Mandurah, which is regional southwest of Western Australia, I think he's retiring next year, I think. And, you know, anaesthesiology was his particular paradigm. That, of course, in regional health you need that as well. And the expertise that retires when these wonderful men and women retire, it is just breathtaking, because that generation is stunning. You know,
And some of it's really challenged by rules and regulations.
Yes.
There's now a dictum from SA Health that children under 4 should not have anaesthetics in rural South Australia. So it means that hernias, pyloric stenoses, all have to be transferred to Adelaide, despite the fact that in years past the general practitioners provided that anaesthetic service, and there are now specialist anaesthetists in Mount Gambier. They are not allowed by dictum
to do that work. And I mean,
to do that work.
So we've talked about it so often. So in Mount Gambier, we've talked about families not having to come to Adelaide.
Yeah.
You know, tell us about the family. So you're doing this incredible paediatric physiotherapy in situ in Mount Gambier. What's the consequence if you don't do that work in Mount Gambier.
Well, then those people do have to travel to Adelaide, and if you have a baby or a child with disability, it's very hard to travel alone with that baby, so usually you have to bring another adult with you. Often they have to bring other children with them as well. Then they have to be accommodated in Adelaide, or father has to take days off work.
And that's 3 days minimum, really.
And a time when work is hard to get.
Yep.
Yeah.
And hard to take some days off, can I say?
And if you have a child with an ongoing problem, it may be a life-determined threatening condition. It may be something much more simple than that. But it's usually something that has quite a finite period that's going to require treatment. And so you're continually asking your boss for time off to be able to go and do these things. Invariably, sadly, you get to Adelaide for your appointment and get told, oh no, sorry, we've had to cancel your surgery today, you'll have to come back next week. And there's just very little understanding of what that actually means to people.
The distances involved.
What it means to families. I mean, this is life crushing. You know, it is tragic enough for a family, and it's happened to all of our families when a tragic, threatening diagnosis occurs, either terminal or not. It's appalling, and it shreds families, and that's dreadful enough. And if the expertise exists in regional centres, why would you be dislocating families at this moment of crisis? That's the bit of this I can't understand.
Yeah. And then often a referral's made for extra assistance to someone else in the metropolitan area, which is going to require repeat visits back to the metropolitan area when that service is available locally or much closer to home. But the people in the tertiary centres in Adelaide aren't familiar with that.
And that's why we appreciate having many students in our practice, because the more students that go through the area, either as university students or as interns or as trainee registrars in general practice, even if they finish up being neurosurgeons, they have some appreciation of what facilities are available and the distances involved when people have to come to a metropolitan area.
And look, that's worth anything. Both my parents came from very small country towns in Western Australia, and they always said to me, you know, everyone should go bush for a couple of years. Yeah. Everyone.
It should be a requirement for any specialist training.
You know, I'm getting all pins and needles on that. You know, and they said that as we were growing up, everyone should go bush for a couple of years because it transforms you too as a human, because you're in a community, you're playing sport, you know, you're going to markets, you're fishing, you're going for a walk. It's a beautiful way of living that transforms the rest of your life too. And if you haven't had that experience, you think the world exists in a capital city. And
well, it's a small picture of our experience in New Guinea, really. You can take it a step further and say that it's very useful to people to spend time in a third world country in their development and education.
Go international, experience life, because as you can see how much of these two people contributed to this country. It's stunning to me. And Pete, I've always wanted to ask you this question. In fact, when we were organising this vlog and I was writing it, my favourite question was the one that followed. So Pete, what surprised you about Sue's PhD? What were the surprises for you? You're a well-educated, brilliant man, and you're a reader, you're a researcher yourself. What surprised you about what Sue went through? And you can be gritty, don't worry about it.
Yeah, well, I've already been living with her for quite a few years.
Yeah.
So nothing surprises me anymore. Not much.
Well, there we go.
You're a woman of mystery to me, Sue. But mate, was there anything about the PhD as a higher degree?
Well, I was particularly impressed with her persistence in pursuing it.
Yeah.
Because there are many roadblocks put up. There are many hoops to jump through. And hurdles to jump, and supervisors changing, and etc. And she stuck at it. And if you didn't know where she was, she'd be sitting in her office in front of a computer at any time of the day or night, pursuing this goal.
I mean, that is so inspirational, I can't even bloody look straight. It's remarkable. I mean, Sue, was that a surprise to you, the scale of the work and the necessity? See, brilliant people leave the program. When you look at students that leave and students that stay in the program, they're of equal intellectual ability. The people that get through have something else. They got grit. They got grit.
Yeah.
Well, Sue's got grit.
I think I said to you at one stage, my father always told me that I was born wondering. And I think thanks to you, you taught me how to find out. But I do love to find out.
You do.
The answers to what I'm wondering about.
And it's grit and curiosity. I mean, Sue's the most curious person I would go, oh, isn't that interesting?
Really curious.
She bloody is. And sometimes it can be really confronting as a supervisor. It's like, well, I don't know why that's happening. And I don't know either, Sue. Shall we find out? Okay, let's see where this goes. And where this thesis ended up was never where we thought it would be.
Well, I mean, it was just an enormous surprise to me when the control group in the research project fell over so spectacularly, because it didn't disprove what we were trying to look at. There was nothing to prove anything because nobody was interested, and that's an enormous question. Why could we not get any interest in that particular region in the problem that we were discussing when they were being criticised just as much as we were in the literature?
And see, that was the mystery to us. And what was interesting, that's when some supervisors sort of left the building like Elvis at that point, because when the control group failed, it was like, there's no research here. Whereas actually Sue and I, because we're both pretty curious and a bit dogged and probably a bit weird, and that's just me, and I went, isn't that interesting? So, because I'm fascinated in research failures. You know, I'm interested in no results, null results, negative results, nothing happened. I'm terribly interested when nothing happens. And so when this control failed, then I sort of said to Sue, well, let's make the rest of the thesis about why the failure happened.
And we might say there was a lot of effort putting into making it work. A lot of trips from Mount Gambier to the Riverland, which is 3 hours drive too.
Oh, I know. And so everything was right. When you look at the research, you did everything right. All the methodology was fantastic, and it failed. Now, a lot of people with qual quant went, well, it's failed, therefore, there's nothing to report. Actually, the best researchers take the failure as the start of a new story. And that's what Sue did.
Well, your heart's really in it then, because you've got yourself to justify as well as the system that is denying that there's a failure. And so you have to go, hey, listen, we're going to uncover this, A, to satisfy me, and B, to say, this is what's going on.
Oh, huge. And it became a real advocate PhD too. As you can see, she's a strong advocate, and the thesis actually became Sue. As I described it, it became Suified. At the start, it was sort of very much, let's be a proper scholar. Let's do that. And then you could see about half the way through, Sue went, bugger it. And it was just this amazing, powerful piece of research.
With your encouragement, I might say.
I'm a bit of a stroppy old bird, as you know. But, so the pair of us got pretty inflamed, didn't we, mate?
We did.
And we went for it.
And it was interesting. It created a few enemies in some parts. But hey, you only become an enemy if the truth hurts, don't you?
Absolutely, and we are the carriers of truth, Sue. I want to talk a little bit about Mount Gambier, because there's a lot of people watching this around Australia, around the world, that are in these regional, rural and remote locations, where beautiful Heather from Tennant Creek this morning. Hi, Heather. Now, could you tell us about the difficulties in doing a PhD from a regional location? We will do the positive stuff, but what's the nuggety rub, the challenges in the regional doctoral space?
Well, I think the biggest challenge I encountered in the first place was that I was used to tutoring students and speaking about stuff that I knew about, and having that sort of position. And suddenly I was trying to find out information, or thought I wasn't sure what I was trying to find out, and there was really nobody to talk to about it, because even my supervisors were remote. They were regional people, and one was in our region, the other one was in a more distant region. Both well known to me, had known them for some time.
So everything seems right, doesn't it? Everything seems right.
So they were sort of helpful, but like you say, they were helpful if we followed the ladder and ticked the boxes all the way in a very traditional kind of way. And when I started to say, what about this, or there was no one ever to sit down. What I missed most was the ability to be able to sit down around a table or somewhere and just talk to people.
There were no morning teas and lunch breaks to discuss with similar-minded people.
Absolutely. And people often talk about the social element of the PhD. We're about to go down to a party. This is their first champagne of many. But that social component of the PhD that is also an intellectual component is often forgotten about, isn't it?
Well, I think often you have a thought about something that's a little bit out here in left field, and you kind of think, no, that this is the direction I'm taking.
Yeah.
But if you're in a group sitting around talking and you just throw that into the conversation, often someone will pick that up and say, no, that's an interesting point.
And that's where the right group has been very, very supportive and constructive in helping this situation.
Well, we realise that, so of course Fridays we run a group called the Right Bunch, which I don't know how I invented it, but we just I was very aware we had a large number of regional students that were mainly women of a particular age who were great professionals who were coming to a PhD, and suddenly, book it and they will come. And we've got them from Canada right the way through Mount Gambier up to Dubbo, Tennant Creek, Alice Springs. It's just remarkable.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
And once a week, and people write together in silence, but then communicate, and it has become very family-like.
It's a religion.
It's a religion.
It's an evangelical cult, Pete. But it is. The women are very close.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I left Pathway this morning, I thought, now this is really funny. I've been part of this group from Tennant Creek to Pathway to Northern Queensland and wherever we are. And that's what he's saying. It's like a religion. At 9:30 about every Friday, I have to start thinking about where the nearest cafe or park bench or somewhere where I've got internet access and mobile phone range, I can sit down and join the Right Bunch because I can't miss it.
And you've done it around the world, and you've written hundreds of thousands of words.
Yeah, sitting in funny places.
Sitting in front, because we always go, Sue, where are you now, Sue? And often you have to say it a few times because I've never heard of these really tiny places. It's extraordinary, but so that community's made a difference.
Well, it's important because it just means that you live your PhD. It isn't just something that you go into a room in the university and do and then go back to life somewhere else. It's fits into is what you organise your life around.
And again, that takes a huge amount of family support. And therefore, that's the next question. I want you to be hard and harsh with me, because I know it seems bizarre, but I am the Dean of Graduate Research. It surprises me every day. But what would you say to me? Obviously, you're my mates. I adore you. I trust you completely. What are we doing wrong, and what can we do better? How can we improve the doctoral experience in regional Australia and beyond? What can we do?
Gee, that's a really hard one to answer, I think, because I think you stand out in your community as an oddity.
The fact that you're doing
because most of my friends are at me every day. Why are you still working? For goodness sake, why haven't you retired? Well, one of my friends actually said to me the other day, look, you look really tired. I've got 2 pregnant physiotherapists working for me who've gone off on leave, and I'm going back to nearly full-time work in the practice, you see. And why are you doing that? Why don't you just shut the door? And I go, pardon?
How would I walk down the street?
How can I do that?
What's going on?
And so you're fairly isolated, still working. You're even more isolated if you're studying. In your own community, because people think that you must be quite loopy, or otherwise they can't really understand what you're on about. But why aren't you happy to be playing cards?
They're nevertheless impressed by what you're doing.
Oh, yes.
And your persistence.
And they're very supportive too. Yeah. That my close friends are, or most.
But I mean, what you're doing is you're challenging normative expectations, because everyone has a life narrative. When we were kids, this is what our life would look like. And for most of us, how we've ended up had nothing to do with where we thought we'd be.
Yeah.
And it's so much better and brilliant because of that.
But I really think perhaps one of the things that would really have helped me in the beginning, and I would not have understood it, so I don't know how you would
excuse me, sir.
Embark on it, but I think every person about to enter a PhD program should be obliged to spend a week or so in the university to begin with, to meet the people that they can contact from a distance.
To form a network, if you like.
To get an idea of where things are. I came to meetings here which, we rush up like we did, and 5 minutes before we were meant to be here, we arrive. And then I'd walk into this university, hobble into this university. And
glamorously stroll into this university.
And I go,
where's the computer room?
Where's that room? And you pull up on your little iPad the map, and there are 27 room 4Cs, and then you don't know which building you're meant to be in, and so then you're trying to find out which building, but none of the buildings are named.
Happens to me on a daily basis.
So unless you know where that building actually is, and I got lost in the health sciences area in that building, this side of it as well, several times, because their theatres both got the same numbers on the same floors.
I know, it happens to me all the time. But can I say one thing we've tried to do, and I'm not sure if this has worked, but I hope it has, is in our Office of Graduate Research, we try to make sure that each of the professional and academic staff have a face, have a name, so that our regional students in particular, they're talking with Layla. And so they have actual people they know. Layla knows Sue, and Sue walks through the registry building like it's like the C's part. Sue's here. Oh, Pete. But so she's known, and they all know her, and do bespoke care for all our students.
And it's a very comfortable feeling. But that
but if that had happened
did not
earlier in
to
the
me.
pathway,
I was not aware of the availability of the Office of Graduate Research. I had no idea that I could just go there unless I had some profound problem. And it wasn't until I had a problem that I really did get to know you, because my original supervisors were referring me to other people who were names that I'd seen on a screen, my computer, but I'd never met. I didn't know what they did or who they were. I didn't know what to tell them my problem was, because I didn't know how they could help me.
so you need a better orientation.
So to orient the knowledge, to orient the person, the people, the knowledge system.
And I think it was compounded by me as well, because one of the approaches when I decided to embark on a PhD was, I don't know if you've really, it's a long time since you did any you probably don't know how to study anymore, and maybe you don't really, do you think you're really going to be able to do this? And so,
by the way, that's just straight ageism. That's just ageism.
That self-doubt creeps in, and you think, I don't want anyone to think I'm stupid. And my father, another one of his great things that he always said was, look, it's better to stay silent than open your mouth and prove that you're a fool.
Wish I'd met your dad. But can I say also, so we've got to stop the ageism and the sexism, all the bad stuff that happens in racism, that happens in this particular space. Because why would your degree from the 60s and 70s be any less valuable than the degree now? I'm sorry, I can't mentally understand that, because you're both incredible readers, you're up to date with the research, so isn't this a strength?
Well, yes, but it doesn't seem like that, I don't think. I think people think, particularly if you've gone to the country, that you're out of the mainstream. You wouldn't even know what day of the week it was in Adelaide, because it's probably different from where you are.
Because the clocks are different. Obviously, Mount Gambier's on its own time zone.
Yeah. And there was an eminent physiotherapist when I did some postgrad physio study, and there was a physiotherapist who was kind of detailed to meet me for coffee, not an official meeting about anything, just come and have a coffee with me. And she'd been a lecturer when I was a tutor, and we went and had a nice coffee and talked about her golf and our time here and there and everywhere else. And then she said, I'm pretty sure that you really shouldn't embark on any more of this this thinking that you're going to become, do the specialised training, because things have changed now, and students these days know how to do a bit of research and look things up. And
as someone who teaches that generation, can I say that would not be the case?
But that inspired you in some ways.
I mean, talk about grit.
That was putting out the challenge.
I can't wait to ring her next week and tell her that it's Dr. Charlton speaking.
Yeah, Dr. Charlton. The younger. So, final question to the pair of you, and I love these people. She says, you're like my heart, you two. You're just phenomenal. Is there any advice you'd offer to families and couples out there about the doctoral journey? Because we rarely get an actual spouse. Like, here's like a sample spouse. Is there anything you'd say to people about families? Because I often say, we don't supervise a student, we supervise our whole family. You've heard me say that. I mean, is that bull dust? Is that accurate? Tell us about families and spouse and PhD and that journey. For everyone out there thinking about it.
Yes, you go first.
I think it is very, very important to have a supportive family around you, and I think I've always had the belief, and it's a very old-fashioned belief, I know, that for Peter to succeed in what he was doing, I needed to follow him where his profession drove him.
Such that you got dragged out of the university lectureship to
I
go
was
to
on
New Guinea.
an upward path of teaching in physiotherapy, etc., etc. And you know the paediatric senior physiotherapist was nearing the end of her life, was gearing me up to take over her job, at the end of her working life, should I say. And and I was looking forward to that in many ways. And then I was invited to travel to New Guinea, to the wilds of the north coast of New Guinea, which were the best 2 years of our lives, probably. Yeah. But my call it biblical, call it whatever you will, whither thou goest, there go I. Yeah. And so we went to New Guinea because that keeps the family together, and you know.
And look, I love that. So I mean, what's that old line? You know, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Yeah. And when the door closes, the window opens, and hell, the window's got a good view.
Yes. Yeah. And it was fabulous. It was really good. So all those years were making sure that what Peter was doing was what he wanted to do, and as long as you always made sure that I was happy and the children were comfortable. We faced another hurdle at boarding school time, because the schools in Mount Gambier were a pretty mixed bunch at that stage when our children were that age, and we felt that we'd chosen to be in Mount Gambier. We'd grown up in metropolitan Adelaide. They ought to have the same basis to make the choices.
See the horizons that we've been able to see.
And we talked about moving to Adelaide, and we worked out that we had 8 or 9 years of that before we'd finished all this secondary schooling, and we were selling his life for 8 or 9 years. Yeah. Which was ridiculous, and we had a round table family discussion and said, no, we can handle this, we'll stay here.
And in fact, the children said,
if you come to Adelaide, we're not going to keep studying. So we, he was supported through all of that, and we supported each other through all of that, and so then he came back to supporting me when I wanted to do something, and he was in his. Is that right? And do you want to speak now?
Interested in the clinical way of what you're doing as well.
We were. Very interested in it. Yeah. Do you want to say anything else?
No, I think you've said it.
I'm sorry.
Look, look. This has been. I think this is now my favourite vlog ever. Look, I didn't know what we do today. I just wanted you to see 2 astounding Australians, 2 astounding people that I just have the privilege of putting a camera in front of, and just let's all revel in their fabulousness. And that's the first thing. To be inspired by this great woman's grit and determination to make social change, to make a difference. And she's done that and will continue to do that, and she is changing regional health in this country, and that's not a bad outcome from a PhD. And also to meet the man, the myth, the legend that is Pete. He's been this great presence in our lives through this wonderful candidature, and he's a great man, and he, Australian masculinity gets a lot of bad press, and Australian men are fascinating species.
Well, the crusade is to get every baby's hip ultrasounded in the first 3 weeks of life.
That's the project. So
that's the crusade.
These 2 have based their life on that, and that will transform paediatric health. It'll transform adults' lives. It'll transform everything. And so to sit with these 2 people is a privilege. To see a marriage like this, I didn't know we'd go deeply to see you 2 as this relationship, but isn't this inspiring? Isn't this inspiring? And this is what the great PhDs are about. And this, in so many ways, what these vlogs are about, is seeing the people. Because we all have assumptions about what a PhD student looks like and what the spouse of a PhD looks like. And here they sit. And let's enjoy this. Let's revel in this and be in awe of Sue and in awe of Pete and what their entire careers have stood for and what their careers will stand for, and the changes they'll make in this country. And what a privilege to see a relationship such as this. So, Happy New Year.
Happy
New Year, everybody. Yes.
And the 3 of us wish you love, light, and peace. Out.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have to say too much.
Oh, I got you.
Lipstick.
Oh, I got you.
That's
I
good.
got you.
He loves
I
it.
love it.
He loves it.
I like you.